Game one is in the books, and what a great start for the Cleveland Guardians. Along with Zach Meisel, I'm Adam the Bull, and it is time for a playoff edition of the Ultimate Cleveland Guardians Show. Zach, you are still at Progressive Field. Are the vibes still there? Are people still going crazy? Or are you there by yourself? What's happening?
No, it's just me and Jason Lloyd burning the midnight oil here.
Ooh, look at that.
At the ballpark. He refused to join us, sadly. He said, quote, he's too important for our little show here. But it's it's just, it's at this point after a game, it's just the people cleaning the ballpark, and you hear like the loud like leaf blowers that they use. Sure. And no, the vibes have changed.
The vibes have changed, but they were there when it mattered, and that's all coming up on the first ever post-game playoff edition of the Ultimate Cleveland Guardians Show. Wow, I'll tell you, Zach, things could not have gone better. I did a quick post-game earlier for the instant reaction, and now there's a lot. First, we'll start with that, and then we'll get to the Jose Ramirez. First of all, let's just start with that. Did they change that call yet, that official scoring on Ramirez?
Not that I've seen.
It has to be a hit. To me, the only question is single or double.
Yeah, like you have to use some subjectivity, right? Because like the only play would have been to first base, and Jose's a fast runner. Like he's beating that out. So tough call, but I'm also sure that he doesn't care.
Okay, fair enough. If he doesn't care, then I won't care. We'll get to what the guys had to say after the game coming up a little bit later, including Stephen Vogt. But obviously, there's so much to talk about with this game, and all of it is positive. I mean, what can you say negative? The ball that dropped between Lane Thomas and Stephen Kwan, a bad at bat by Josh Naylor with some runners on base later in the game where he kind of struck out on some ugly pitches. But not much negative to say. Let's start with all the positive. The Guardians, we talked about them needing to win game one. You want to get off to the great start. You want to end this Tiger momentum. You know you got Skubal coming up. Not that you can't beat him, but he's going to be tough. And they took care of business right off the bat with that fantastic first inning.
Yeah, I mean, everything about this day was the perfect script, wasn't it? I mean, this is when you're dreaming up, like, how can Cleveland win a World Series? This is the game. This is what you envision. You got great starting pitching. You got an early lead, and you didn't look back, and you leaned on your bullpen for 4 1/3 scoreless innings. So it was just the perfect start. You always wonder after a week of rest if that turns into rust and can be a detriment. And for the Guardians, there was no issue. I mean, they came. I mean, you don't see a 5-run inning very often, period. No. Let alone in the first inning, let alone after a layoff. I think the Guardians were just chomping at the bit. And when you can knock out their opener before the opener gets an out, that's such a successful start. And, all of a sudden, it's, everyone was asking Cleveland all week. It's like, how are you going to handle all these different pitchers in a bullpen game and the chaos that the Tigers present? And well, they just showed you.
And what we're seeing across the league, we just saw it again in this Mets-Phillies game, is that other teams, Zach, including the Tigers, their bullpen makes them nervous, but not the Guardians. We'll get to the bullpen, though, but let's get back to the first inning here, because first of all, in the top of the first, before we get to the everything in the bottom of the first, in the top of the first, you could tell Tanner Bibee was a little overamped, right? It's his first postseason start. He's leaving all his fastballs like were all high after he struck out the leadoff hitter, and he got into a little bit of trouble there with 2 on and 2 out. And the ball off the bat of Colt Keith, I don't know, from your perspective at the stadium might have been different, but when that ball goes opposite field off Colt Keith's bat, for a second I kind of took a breath because oh no, it's going to drop in. I'm like, and then, Kwan had him played perfectly. But for a second, I thought it was going to drop in. And it felt like Bieber just caught his breath after that. So for them to get a little trouble in the first inning, get out of it. And then the bottom of the first, and I hate to sully this beautiful show and this beautiful team by mentioning this other team, but so I'm only do it once real quick. But for a second, the bottom of the first kind of reminded me of the Browns playoff game against the Steelers. Remember that when Baker won and like they just went crazy early, and you're like, oh my god, oh my god, oh my god. That first inning was just bonkers that they scored 5 runs without an out. Just crazy. And 6 straight base runners.
Yeah, so I always watch the fielder, whether it's I'm trying to figure out, is this ball going to be a home run or is it going to stay in the park? Or and Quan didn't panic. And so then I was like, oh, because I had the same thought as you off the bat. I was like, ooh, that's probably going to drop in. But Quan never like darted one way or another. So I'm like, all right, well, he's not just going to lackadaisically go after this. So, yeah, it's funny. You actually called him Bieber.
Oh, did I say Bieber?
You said Bieber, which it's appropriate though, because Tanner Bibee was really nervous all week. He said he felt like he had a lead block in his stomach the last 3 days.
Wow.
So who did he turn to for advice?
The guy I called him, Shane Bieber.
Exactly. And Bieber this morning kind of like walked him through what to expect and took a load off of his mind. And I think in that first inning, like it's impossible not to recognize the environment, notice the differences.
Oh, yeah.
Pomp and circumstance. There's a flyover with the anthem. There's an American flag the size of Canada. And, it's like you're cognizant of what this is.
Mm-hmm.
And he's warming up in the bullpen, and you hear the chants and you hear the round of applause everybody's getting from the home crowd. And I think it's natural to come out and maybe get overamped, not quite have the command you'd want to have.
Mm-hmm.
But I think to get out of that, obviously that's big in itself. It's huge then when your offense gives you 5 runs of run support right after that. But like there's no better script to settling in when you got through the tough part and you proved like, okay, I can still do this. Like this is still just me throwing to Bo Naylor. And then now you're pitching with a 5-run lead, and you can definitely breathe easier after that.
And despite the fact that the Tigers have been playing great baseball for 2 months, and I'm not discrediting them, the series is not over, all of that, there's nobody in their lineup that scares you. And I think the pitchers know that. There's not a single guy. Like, the Tigers are worried about Jose Ramirez. They may not be worried about anybody else, even the other good players, Naylor. They're worried about Jose Ramirez. The Guardians are not worried about anybody. I understand they took Bibee out. I was about to say Bieber again. Because they didn't want him to face Carpenter for
Beatty,
a third time.
Don't forget Tyler Beatty.
Tyler Beatty, yeah. What happened?
All 3 of them were on the staff at the beginning of the year.
That's right. They didn't want him to face Carpenter for a third time, and we'll get to that. But because he hits righties well, but even though they brought in another righty, that's another thing. But let's go to the bottom of the first, which you talked about briefly before, and I just thought it was so cool the way Quan on the second pitch just crushes the ball to right field. When you weren't sure about him because he had the bad second half and he looked decent when he came off the IL, but now he hasn't played in a week. And then David Fry, who's also had a bad second half, has this great at-bat, long at-bat, and he gets on base. And then Ramirez, obviously they get a good hop on that to score the run. Then and I said this before, and I'm curious your take because I said this on the earlier show. The Tigers play the infield in when Josh Naylor was up, second and third, nobody out. And that is all about the fact that the Tigers know that if they're down too much going into the middle innings, they're done. They're done. And you don't worry about that against other if they're playing, the Astros, maybe they have the infield in. I'm not 100% sure about that. And the Astros pitched well in that series, but they felt the pressure of can't fall too far behind, and it bit them.
Have you been talking to Jason?
I have not. I haven't spoken to Jason. We were in a text, UCSS chat group, but he was talking about that too, right?
He can't get over that.
Yeah.
That's his biggest takeaway from the game is that you're right. You play the infield in because you got to limit the damage and you got to stop the bleeding and all those things. And you have to do that because if you're down, you're not coming back. This team was 71-2 when they had the lead after 6 innings. They were 82-0 when they had the lead after 8. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, after 6, that's a crazy stat. Like, the lead after 8 is one thing. Most teams win most of their games. But after 6, a lot of teams lose a ton of games after 6 that they're winning. To only have 2 losses,
71-2. And I'd have to go back and look. I think the 2 were, at least one of them was probably the Hunter Gaddis when he was tipping his pitches in late April and just had a bad week. That's a hit. Like, they've been so consistently dominant, and you saw it today. Like, it in hindsight, like, maybe it was the right move, because those 4 relievers, the 4 horsemen, or whatever you want to call them, Heron, Smith, Gaddis, and Clase, came in and pieced together 4 1/3 scoreless innings. And like, Cade Smith comes in like a cyborg, faces 4 batters, strikes them all out. I mean, it's amazing.
Go ahead, Zach.
No, I think it alters your strategy if you're the opponent. And like you said, like, other teams, like, everybody has their strengths and weaknesses, but the way the October schedule shapes up, Cleveland can lean into their strength so much.
Right. And not only is it big because of the innings they're going to pitch, but it affected the first inning, as we just talked about, because they didn't want to fall too behind. They moved the infield in. If the infield's not in, Naylor probably doesn't get a hit there. It's probably a ground ball out, who knows, right? It also affects their ability to take out. Like, if Tanner Bibee pitched well, he might have gotten out of that inning just fine against Gary Carpenter. Who knows? But if Tanner Bibee, a very good young pitcher, not a superstar, but a very good young pitcher, if he's pitching for another team that doesn't have a bullpen, that's not an option. You're not going to take him out in the 5th inning. You got to try to get him through. The Guardians never have to get him through because of what they have in the pen, especially right now, because they're rested and have days off. And they're so deep in that pen. I mean, think about it. Ben Lively had been a really good starter all year, doesn't make the playoff roster. Pedro Avila did a great job as the long man in the pen, doesn't make the playoff roster. That's because their pitching is so deep. And, by the way, Sandlin didn't make it. That was interesting. Go ahead.
I was wrong.
And that's fine.
I do wonder if it was a different team, because the Tigers are so left-handed heavy in their lineup, if Sandlin would have made it. But I do think in a 7-game series he'd make it, because they'd carry maybe an extra pitcher. I don't know. I was wrong. I was surprised.
Yeah. We were right about Cantillo. We were both right about Cantillo making it. And I think that's it. I think I could see, if they're playing a right-handed heavy team in a 7-game series, Cantillo being out and Lively and Sandlin back in. But just finishing up the bottom of the first here real quick. So obviously, Naylor then comes through, and then they go to the bullpen to bring in the guy that was supposed to be their starter, who after this next at bat pitched very well. But Lane Thomas just jumps on that first pitch. And that's a no-brainer. It was funny because in our chat group, Jason obviously is at the game with you. So he's a little ahead because I'm watching it on TV. And all of a sudden he puts in our chat group in caps, Lane Thomas. And I'm like, I didn't see it. What happened? But I realized, I'm like 20 seconds behind there. And then I see the home run a couple of seconds later. And so he spoiled it a little for me. But I mean, again, another great story. A guy who couldn't have played worse when he first got here. I don't think he could have played worse than he played in August. And he had a great September. And, like with everybody else, is there going to be rust? Did he cool off? And who knows? Maybe he doesn't get a hit the rest of the series. But that home run, it's just like after that, it's 5-0. Everybody just takes a breath. It makes the whole rest of the game easier for everybody. That was unbelievable.
They traded for him on July 29th.
Yeah.
And he was in Arizona. I think the Nationals were playing the Diamondbacks. He hops on a red eye from Phoenix to Detroit to meet the Guardians in Detroit on July 30th. And it was a day game, getaway day. And he was in the lineup. Like, he flew to Detroit overnight, got like an hour and a half of sleep at a hotel, goes to the ballpark, and he's in the lineup hitting second, starting in right field. But that was against the Tigers, and that Tigers team was very different. That was the trade deadline. It was the last time these two teams faced each other, and
Yep.
the Tigers were gearing up to trade Jack Flaherty and Mark Canha and Andrew Chafin. And,
Amazing.
it's interesting because I think now these teams reconvene. The Tigers are very different, and Lane Thomas is different. I mean, he had a miserable month. He was 9 for 73 over a 26 game stretch in August, and he went from June 20th to September 2nd without hitting a home run. But he figured some things out in September, and it's so important. I mean, we talked about this lineup where you need your stars to play like stars, and they did. Steven Kwan was great. Jose Ramirez, I know you want that first inning.
That's got to be it. Come on now, official scorer. Who's the official scorer? Let's call him out.
Josh Naylor poked it through the infield that was drawn in, right? But Kyle Manzardo, David Fry, and Lane Thomas are like the supporting cast, I guess. Like, if Bo Naylor or Brian Rocchio delivers a hit, like if Jhonkensy Noel hits a home run, runs into one, like great. But you're not relying on that. But you need your stars to play like stars, and you need some contributions from that like B tier of Thomas, Manzardo, and Fry. And Thomas and Fry were critical, and you're going to need them above all else. I know Thomas hit the home run against a righty, but like Skubal is on the mound in game 2. Those guys are going to be in there again. And those are your two guys who can crush lefties. So just critical for those two guys to be in a good place. I think it lengthens the lineup. It takes a little bit of pressure off Kwan and Ramirez. And it just makes you more formidable. I mean, you can, the Tigers can go with their pitching chaos and mixing and matching and stuff, but it's a lot harder to do when you've got Fry and Manzardo, who are both capable, when you've got Lane Thomas able to hit whoever you throw out there. I mean, he was sitting like that was first pitch he saw from a righty, a hanging slider, and he crushed it. So he's in a good spot.
And I'll say this even about Rocchio, who had a 697 OPS in September, which you say, well, that's not very good. But for him, it's good. Like, at least that's close to league average. The rest of the year, his OPS was in the 500s or the low 600s. I actually thought, but first of all, he got a hit today. I thought he had some good at-bats. He worked some deep counts. He got called. He got a couple of strikes called that were bad calls. The home plate umpire missed a few calls. Obviously, that low pitch to Jhonkensy was a bad strike. But I thought they gave a lot of good at-bats in this game. And, but you're right. I mean, their second-tier group, Manzardo, Fry, and Thomas, got to be good. And they were. I mean, Manzardo pinch hit. He'll probably be the same lineup, I would assume, game 2. And then Manzardo, depending on what they do in game 3, will probably play in that game. But, David Fry, that good at bat for a walk, and then putting in those 2 insurance runs, which obviously they didn't need, but you never know. So he comes through, rips that one down the line. It was big. I mean, you can't ask for much more than the guys gave you today in the lineup. It was a great day.
So many things about this team remind me of 2016, even though I hate making those comparisons because that year was such an anomaly with how they got to the World Series. But you think about it, and the formula is the same. It's get just enough starting pitching, get just enough timely hitting, and lean on your bullpen. And in 2016, they won game 1 against the Red Sox in the opening round. They won game 1 against the Blue Jays in the ALCS. They won game 1 against the Cubs in the World Series. And it takes so much pressure off. I mean, if you're the Tigers, like, obviously, when Skubal's on the mound, you expect to win.
Sure.
Now you have to.
There's a lot of pressure.
Yeah.
Those young guys are feeling that pressure right now. There's no doubt about it.
Yeah, and if you're the Guardians and you lose game 1 and then you have to go up against Skubal, I mean, that's just almost like a death sentence. So it's like they're in such a good spot. The Tigers, this was their great plan, and it was foiled 5 batters in, not even like 3 batters in. So it's going to be interesting to see, even if the Tigers win game 2, what do they do moving forward? Do they go back to Holton? Do they try Reese Olson as a starter? I don't know. I think that if you're the Guardians, like, this gives you a lot of confidence because you weren't sure how this would work. We said it, like, they haven't faced this version of the Tigers.
Right.
And their first trial was a resounding success.
Reese Olson, he pitched well after that home run. He did a really nice job. And obviously it didn't work using the opener today. Anybody ripping the Tigers for that is stupid because that's what they've done successfully for the last 2 months to give them this run. It just didn't work for them today. And Holton has done a great job for them as an opener. He did it in game 2 against Houston. But fortunately, the Guardians had his number today. They seemed very comfortable. All 4 guys he faced it looked like very comfortable at bats against him. Now, go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say, I someone mentioned this to me at one point during the game, and I can't remember who, but remember when we were making a big deal about the wind tunnel?
Yeah, right.
And there was like Kwan's ball didn't quite get out there in the first. Rocchio hit.
I thought that was gone, didn't you?
I did, yeah. It reminded me of, it was the same swing as he had a leadoff homer at Yankee Stadium in game 2 in the division series 2 years ago. Yeah. And it reminded me of that. But there were a couple, they hit a couple to the wall and right that didn't get out. And I'm like, I wonder if they're just waiting to turn that back on, maybe if they advance.
Yeah, what happened? Did the wind tunnel shut off in late in the season? Because it's, it's not really fall weather. It's still kind of summer weather out there. But now let's get to the pitching. We've alluded to it. We've talked about it a little bit. Let's start with Tanner Bibee, who settled down after that first inning. Got in a little trouble again in the 4th when it was first and second. Was it the 4th? First and second, nobody out. They turned that double play. I'm going to double check that because now I don't know why it's sounding wrong to me. I'm right. 4th inning, Green singles. He walks Keith on a 3-2 pitch. And, at that moment, they start getting some activity going. But then with Spencer Torkelson, to get him to ground into that double play, I mean, that was huge. And then so first and second, nobody out. You think, all right, maybe the Tigers cut into the lead a little bit, and he shuts them down after that. So that was a great job.
It was funny when he never likes to come out of a game, right? And we can all see it. You see the expression on his face, or his dad was telling me recently that even back in middle school, high school, because his dad was his coach the whole time, he would see his dad come out of the dugout to pull him from a game, and his go-to move is to like turn his back and look up at the sky. And I always see sometimes you see come on. Like,
yeah.
Do you have to let me get one more batter? And like, he'll have like the glove on his hip or like just giving that look of like, are you sure? And today I actually noticed like Bibee did look up to the sky when Vogt came out to make the pitching change. I kind of laughed, but Bibee said after the game, he's like, look, I never want to come out of a game, but you turn around, you see Cade Smith jogging in, and it's like, I get it.
Right.
I mean, that guy is so automatic, and it's insane what this bullpen can do. And I'm sure Bibee, just his nature, put a lot of pressure on himself to say like he always wants to go 6-7 innings, and you get to the playoffs, it's a little different. And a lot of times getting through a lineup twice is what you want, and he did that. And it's like Austin Hedges told me after the game, he does this a couple more times and no one's going to be calling him Tanner Bibee on a national broadcast anymore, right? So it's he could literally make a name for himself. And
yeah, exactly. Even though I just called him Shane Bieber.
There's room to grow.
So you mentioned we've alluded to Cade Smith a couple of times, and in a way, it shouldn't be surprising at all what he did because he's done it all season long. But sometimes you have to just sit back and say, this guy's still a rookie. I know he had a magnificent season. I know he should be in contention for Rookie of the Year. Who knows? Maybe he'll win the thing. He is still a rookie, though. And every player will tell you it's different in the playoffs when you make your first appearance. And you would have never known. I felt like that strikeout was only one pitch. It seemed like it happened so quick. I mean, he just mowed down 4 batters like he was on a lunch break. I mean, it was crazy. The whole bullpen, but specifically with him, I mean, it was like too easy for him.
He doesn't waste time. He's like a gift to anybody in a hurry or any sports writer in the press box who, wants to go home. Like he just attacks. I think that's honestly what's worked for him. Is if you look at his numbers in the minors, the strikeout rate was always crazy, not giving up a ton of hits, but the walk rate was a little high. And he got to the majors and just attacked. His very first outing of the year in Oakland, 2 innings, 5 strikeouts, and just like you said, mowing him down, not wasting any time. And it's what he's done is insane. I don't know. Like, I think you probably get a glimpse of it on TV, but like what you see, if he looks like a robot, if he looks like a guy who the heartbeat is steady, and it's because I even tried to ask him today, I was like, what are you actually like on the mound in a big moment? And he's like, he is so programmed. He's like pounded it through his own head enough, all the cliches, control what you can control and that kind of thing, that he is a robot. Like, David Fry makes fun of him all the time and says like, oh, I'm just going to go out there, throw 98 miles an hour. Here we go. Ho hum, come back to the dugout, go back out again. Like, and it's just like mocks him in a robot voice. And but it's worked.
Yeah.
He truly is automatic like that.
The bullpen to get 13 outs through 48 pitches between them, which is crazy if you think about it. And like Gaddis threw 7 pitches, Clase threw 8 pitches. Are you kidding me? Like, not only do these guys have a week off going into this, they're off tomorrow. None of them even threw 20 pitches. And like Tim Herron is the loser of the day, walking 1 batter. I mean, it's just nuts.
It's. I think it was important to pitch those guys today just because they haven't
100%.
pitched in an actual game in over a week. But it would have been a game where you can get away with, like, get Walters and Sobrowski out there when they don't have to be super nervous. Let Eli Morgan pitch an inning.
Right.
And also shield those guys from the Tigers so they don't get a chance to look at them. But then, you want to get them out there. They're going to have a day off tomorrow. You don't want them going 10 days in between relief appearances. And because they make it look so easy, it's like, did the Tigers really gain an advantage seeing them again? Probably not.
No. Especially, if anything, they're going to be stressed out even more. They're going to press even more early in the game because they know they've got to score, because they all got embarrassed. That was it. I mean, those guys allowed 1 base runner, and that was Herron. I think had a 4-pitch walk. I don't even remember who walked for the Tigers, but they couldn't. I mean, they had no chance, these guys. And they won after the other.
And that's in relief of Bibee.
Yeah.
I would think Boyd and Cobb. Yeah. It'll be a quick hook.
Oh,
so
100%. Like
Boyd.
Right.
Was those guys, would you say 7 pitches, 8 pitches? Like, it's okay. Well, then I don't think, there's going to be any wear on the tires when you ask Cade Smith or Hunter Gaddis to go 35 pitches. You know what I mean? I remember in 2016, Andrew Miller came in, I think the first game against Boston, threw like 50 pitches.
Yeah.
Cody Allen was throwing like 40 pitches. So
exactly.
You can do that in the playoffs.
It's not crazy to think that all 4 of those, and there's Jason, you wise guy.
Hi. That's all. I told Zach I'd stop it and say that.
All right, Jason. Thanks. You said you were too much of a big shot to join us here.
Well, that's bullshit.
That's that's the quote I've been told.
Huh?
That's the quote I've been told.
No, I never said. Okay. You want my impressions of the game?
Go ahead, real quick. What do you got?
This team's going to make a really deep run because of this bullpen. I bet you haven't said that yet.
Not at all.
And Bull loved your infield in thing. That was his takeaway too.
And Jason, I made the point of not only does the bullpen great because of what they do when they're pitching, but it forced the Tigers to bring the infield in, which they would not have done, I don't think, against other teams. No. And it also allows Tanner. I was saying to Zach before, with Tanner Bibee, as good as he is, and he was great tonight, a lot of other teams, the manager's like, we got to let him get through 5. We got to get him through 5. They never have to do that. I was just about to say, you guys could both react to this, like, it wouldn't be crazy to think that the 4 guys who pitched today out of the pen could all go 2 innings each in a game if they needed them to.
Yeah. The only thing on the infield, and I've been talking about it all game, Zach's probably sick of me talking. I was just amazed. I was blown away.
Yeah.
They would bring the infield in a 1-0 game in the first inning of a 5-game series. But I think AJ Hinch just told you, if we fall behind 2-0, we can't win. And I ran that by a couple people in the clubhouse who said, yeah, that's basically what he said. If they fall behind 2-0, they can't win against this bullpen. Think about that. That's unbelievable. That's how good. And Hinch knows this bullpen better than anybody. Like, they play in the division. These teams know each other really, really well. And for him to say, if we fall behind 2-0, we can't win, tells you all you need to know. I got to go right. Bye.
No, you don't need me. Come on, Jason. Let's go.
Well, I think you and I end up writing like the exact same thing.
There you go. So yeah, I mean, to the point of Cobb and Boyd will go game 2 against School, especially in game 2, because you're facing Skubal. If Boyd gets into any trouble early, like, see ya. If he doesn't look right, I don't care if it's the first inning. Any sign of trouble, especially against Skubal, I'm getting him out of there.
I'm with you. I don't. I think I said this the other day, but like, if this got to a game 5 and it's supposed to be Boyd Skubal, but the bullpen's rested after a day off, go start Cade Smith. Go start him. Like, you could do that. You could get 9 innings out of the bullpen.
100%.
I wouldn't. I wouldn't put that past them. So you can get creative. You obviously don't need to yet. There's no, you don't need any forced sense of urgency yet.
No.
But it'll be interesting to see, like again, the pressure's on Detroit. Skubal has to be perfect, and there's a lot of pressure on Detroit's hitters, I think, to just get an early lead.
By the way, let's give I'm sorry, Zach, but let's give the fans an update. The Kansas City Royals just took a 3-2 lead on the Yankees in game 1 of that series in the 4th inning on a 2-run homer by Melendez. Just hit a 2-run shot in the top of the 4th. Yankees had scored 2 in the bottom of the 3rd to take a 2-1 lead. And Garrett Cole struggling in his first start of the playoffs. 3 1/3, 7 base runners, 3 earned runs, and only 2 strikeouts. And he's thrown 54 pitches with 1 out in the top of the 4th.
Your Mets Guardians World Series predictions off to a roaring start.
Yeah, the Mets, they were down 1-0. They scored 5 in the 8th, and they won 6-2. And obviously we'll have the Padres and Dodgers, which should be a great series. That game starting in about an hour. Are you rooting? Do you want the Royals to win?
I have different.
I know you'd rather go to New York in terms of.
I have different motivations and priorities than everybody else.
Yeah.
Kansas City doesn't have a direct flight from Cleveland. So, like, as insane as that sounds, I would prefer New York, I think, right?
From that perspective.
Those are my rooting interests.
But the Guardians, I think, would rather play Kansas City. Obviously, they'd have the home field advantage against Kansas City, which they wouldn't against the Yankees. So we'll see. We've got a long way to go. But if the Royals can take game 1 in New York, that's huge, especially against Garrett Cole. But there's a long way to go in that game. Okay, from the clubhouse after, anything we need to know in terms of what Stephen Vogt had to say, what some of the guys had to say?
No, I mean, so Shane Bieber's here. Caught up with him, and he was saying he had some FOMO just watching them celebrate from afar. He's 6 months now post surgery, so he's itching to get back next summer, and who knows where that'll be. But wanted to be part of this, and he'll be around the team until this thing ends. And obviously, he has helped Bibee leading up to today, and you see leadership in different places, right? Like Austin Hedges obviously has been a staple in that clubhouse, and he can speak with authority about everything going on. And he's kind of set the tone all year, saying they want to treat every game like a playoff game so that when they get to the playoffs, nothing feels too daunting. Nothing feels new. You're not overcome with dread because you look around and realize what a crazy atmosphere it is. And I think that kind of played out today, didn't it? Like it looked like your standard, like this was the blueprint. This is the script that they would write for any victory. And, I think it's maybe the fruits of all the labor they put in for the last 8 months.
It's not really the priority now, but I was just thinking a little, all the key guys in this bullpen are under control for at least four more years, if not 5. So is Ramirez. So is Quan. Well, Quan have 3 more years after this?
3, yeah.
Right. Okay, so 3. So you got at least 3 more from Quan. Jimenez, Manzardo. Like, all these guys are minimum 4, except for Quan, who's 3. You just got to add. We just got to add next year. Let's get one slugger and a good mid-rotation starter. I shouldn't bring it up now, but
make a deep run and get that World Series windfall, right. And then we'll talk.
Yes.
Figure out who's broadcasting their games next year. And
that's right.
There we go.
It's going to be fascinating to see. I know you didn't get to watch it there, but I actually really liked I don't know if it was technically TBS or TNT. Brian Anderson, who does the Brewers games, I believe.
He's great. Yeah.
Great play-by-play guy. And I thought Jeff Francoeur was good as the analyst. And the woman who was the sideline, the on-field person, she did a nice job. Can't think of her name, but anyway, it was an excellent broadcast. I liked the graphics. It was kind of clean. It was in 4K, which was sweet if you have a 4K TV. And game 2 will be on there on Monday. Again, 4:08 first pitch, and it will be Matthew Boyd going. I mean, it's amazing that your game 2 and game 3 starters have pitched a combined 50 innings this season, period. Not just, they pitched a little in the minors, but that's what it is. Let's get to the fan comments here, Zach.
I was just going to add one thing, that matchup in game 2, that is teacher versus student. That is Matthew Boyd, the longtime mentor of Tarek Skubal, dating back about 5 years. And they are still very close friends. And it's going to be weird.
Yeah, sure. Matthew Boyd revenge game against Skubal, who's going to win the Cy Young. Derek says, let's go, guys. What a freaking win. Huge for everyone to turn it on in the first. Ribs and Whiskey says, Quan ripping that double to start the game was huge. Kevin Robinson, that looked like the team in the first half of the year versus the second half. Maybe the rest helped. Sometimes it works against you. In this case, it did seem like everybody was kind of fresh and ready to go. By the way, we mentioned the one negative there was that ball that dropped in left center. They were saying on the broadcast that maybe he lost it in the sun. I thought maybe it's the way Thomas reacted. I thought maybe he thought that Quan called him off. Do you know what happened there?
No, and I haven't.
Although the left fielder shouldn't call off the center fielder anyway, really. But
yeah, it's possible someone was asked about it, and I haven't read through all the transcripts yet. If I wasn't in on a certain interview, the sun was abundant.
Yes.
No clouds in the sky, and yet there were also, there were shadows as the day went on. I don't know. It was very awkward.
That play.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know. All right, a lot of let's goes, a lot of Cleveland Guardians rock, all that. Tony says it was one of the best playoff wins in team history. Mike says, hey, guys, Lane Thomas trade was worth it. Evan 419 says, Lane train coming through. Get off the MF and tracks. Some people giving Mets scores here. Let's see. Matt says, Bull is definitely eating some crow after he trashed Lane Thomas in August. Did I trash him? I mean, by saying he played crappy. I was never against that trade. And I was consistently saying you got to be patient with that guy. There may have been a moment when they were playing poorly where I might have said, this guy sucks and that guy sucks right now, which was true. But how many?
I think part of the issue, too, was no one was picking up the slack.
No, that's right. Let's see. SB says, nice to see Cookie and Bieber in the dugout. Oh, I didn't see Cookie. I didn't realize he was there. Good for him. Chris says, Vogt's pitching changes were right on time. Although if it didn't work, he would have probably said, Vogt's an idiot. Diesel blueprint game. This game is why this team can win it all. It really is an example of why they are capable of winning a World Series.
Yeah, that's the exact article I wrote for The Athletic after the game. You repeat this 10 more times and you're hoisting a scrap of metal, as Rob Manfred once called it.
Yeah. What an idiot. Jackie Coffee. I don't know. Go Guardians, bleep the Yankees. They are on. They are down 1-0. Let's do this, American League Central. Mike, if the Yankees, Dodgers, and Phillies get eliminated, but the Guardians move on, that would be hilarious. It certainly would. Brendan says, best Guardians podcast. Bull and Zach, you guys are great to listen to. Awesome game today. Voting the boys looked great. Thank you, Brendan. Let's see. Chris, Fry was a gift, and I loved it. I have a feeling. Tony says, I have a feeling Noel will hit a bomb at some point in the playoffs. His dad, they talked about this on the broadcast. His dad got to see him play in person for the first time. That was cool.
Yeah, and they have a funny relationship because his dad loves to just cut to the chase and say, like, why did you swing at that pitch and things like that. And John Kensey will always tell him, like, why don't you get in the batter's box and try to hit a 91-mile-an-hour slider? So this was the first time, that his dad's come to America and gotten to see him play.
Nice. Okay, let's Craig Jones, Cade Smith look like Andrew Miller in 2016. I mean, he's really pitching at that kind of level right now. A right-handed Andrew Miller. Jose rakes in Tiger Stadium, says Tony. Speaking, by the way, real quick, what's his name? Why did I forget his name for a second? Jake Rogers. First of all, I mean, his mustache is just so crazy. But, man, his pitch framing is nuts. Like, he moves the ball so much. If I were the umpire, I'd be like, well, it's got to be a ball. Why has he got to move it so much?
Yeah.
Even when it's like a strike, he still moves it. I don't know. It's just strange.
It's like
it works.
I'm going to focus on the mustache part of this.
Yeah, go ahead.
Rod Beck, Sal Fasano, like those are the vibes I'm getting.
It is big time old school. Chris, Bull, next game, Tigers are going to swing more due to this win. Our pitching needs to stay steady. Chris also says this was referencing when Jason was here just a few minutes ago. He said you have an empty soul over your shoulder. Jason says that all the time, that he's dead inside. Let's see what else we got here. Padres, Dodgers will be entertaining. Let's skip ahead. John says we want the Royals for sure so we can have home field advantage. I don't care about the Ohio State game. I'm not reading that. Matt, let's not act like Cy Young guarantees a win in 2007. CC won it, got hammered in game 1 against Boston. Yeah, there's no guarantees. Nobody's afraid of Tarik Skubal's a very good pitcher, but nobody's afraid of him. Guardians are not afraid of him.
Well, it also takes more to win. I mean, if he pitches well, but the Guardians also pitch well.
Yeah.
It boils down to who gets a timely hit, maybe against the other team's bullpen.
Floyd Hart says, fellas, this is the best post-game show in town. Go Guards. Thank you, Floyd. Matt says, question for Zach, is there any way Bieber resigns with the Guardians?
Yeah, but I don't know. Anything they could offer him, a team like the Dodgers, who is not scared off by pitchers with injury risks, could top that offer, obviously.
Yeah.
They're always willing to spend more money. The question would be, what is Bieber, like, what's important to him? Are you really comfortable with Cleveland's doctors and medical staff because you've been working with them for the last 6 months and really 6 years? I think it's possible. I don't know if I would say it's super likely, but it's difficult to forecast too, because different teams have different appetites for guys with this situation. Like he told me today, like he hopes like next summer, June, July, he's back on the mound. So you're paying for half a season where he's getting back into pitching shape and then maybe tacking on a year, 2 years.
Right.
There's risk there.
Honestly, Zach, I think for this team, knowing they're not going to spend a ton of money, they're probably better off signing a pitcher that's healthy. If they're going to, as you said, back in the day, you used to be able to sign a guy very cheaply when he's coming off an injury. That doesn't happen anymore. So instead of spending, I don't know what it's going to cost, $15 million to sign Bieber, let's sign $15 million to a pitcher who may not be as good when Bieber's healthy, but can pitch the whole season. A solid innings eating, middle of the rotation veteran to be a solid presence there. And let's you want to re-sign Boyd or Cobb for cheap money They probably won't get too much. Do that too. That's fine. And then go get one slugger for the outfield. And, but that's more of an off-season conversation.
You've already got the 2025 championship parade mapped out. There you go.
Right. That's right. All right. It's Yankees are threatening in the bottom of the fourth, by the way. They have second and third, 2 outs with Alex Verdugo at the plate. All right. Anyway, that's going to do it for us for now. Good stuff. Zach live from Progressive Field. We'll be back probably about 10 o'clock, 10 p.m. is my guess on Monday, give or take. Thanks, everybody, for joining us. Please hit the subscribe button. And we'll talk to you next time. Where else but right here on the Ultimate Cleveland Guardian Show.